So in today's video, I'm sharing 7 red flags in dating you need to be aware of when you're in codependency recovery. Because the goal is to create mutually satisfying relationships, not one-sided toxic relationships that hurt you. But if you're new, my name's Michelle Ferris. I'm a psychotherapist and I love helping people create relationships at work. So in this video, we're going to talk about the 7 red flags and what you can do instead. Because when you know how to spot the red flags, you're going to be that much closer to creating the kind of healthy relationships you want. So the first red flag in dating is when the other person is newly single or still hung up on their ex. Because the last thing you want to do is to get emotionally attached to someone who isn't available. Because that's part of us attracting unavailable people, and I don't want that for you. So for instance, if you're dating someone and they've just gotten out of a relationship and you can tell they haven't processed any of the grief or the sadness or really incorporated any of the lessons from that relationship, that's a red flag. Because that baggage is going to spill out into their next relationship, which is most likely you if you get involved with them. If, on the other hand, maybe they're newly divorced, but in talking to them, you realize that they have processed their grief and they appear to be more emotionally available. How somebody talks about their past relationship is going to give you volumes of information. For instance, if they badmouth their last relationship or make it their fault that the relationship ended and don't see their part in it, those are red flags I really need you to pay attention to because that shows a lack of accountability. And you can't really build a healthy relationship without taking responsibility for your own behavior. The next red flag in dating I want you to be aware of in codependency recovery is when they start to exhibit unhealthy, toxic behavior, like getting drunk on the first date, snapping at the waitress, treating people around them disrespectfully. Those are really key, and you'll know when you've hit a toxic behavior because your gut's gonna turn. I want to say something about the drinking for a minute. If you are a social drinker, that's totally fine. I'm not talking about social drinking. I'm talking about somebody getting drunk on the first date. Because when you're on a first date, you're usually on your best behavior because people can't fake who they are. They just can't. And those first few meetings are going to tell you a lot about that person's character or lack of that you really need to pay attention to. If you've ever been able to spot an early warning sign, say me too in the comments. That's great progress. Another red flag in dating when you're in codependency recovery is when you feel compelled to help or rescue someone out of their present circumstances. For instance, maybe they've just hit a really bad patch, but they're not taking any action. Or maybe they haven't had a job in a long time, or they don't have any friends. And it doesn't mean you can't date someone who's having a really hard time, but you want to be mindful of whether or not they're actually able to function in their own life. Because if I get that feeling, that compulsion to help someone really early, that's a red flag because I don't want to be rescuing anymore in my relationships. I want to attract a friend or a mate, if I wasn't married, that is healthy and functional in their daily life. But if they're in a lot of crisis, it may not be the best time for them to be dating or for you to be dating them. So the next red flag in dating when you're in codependency recovery is when the person doesn't have good relationships with family or friends. Now, when it comes to family, most of us may have strained relationships with family members. That's okay. But I want you to be aware of how they talk about their family. Do they blame excessively them for the entire relationship? Because when people talk about their family, you're going to learn a lot more about their past and their ability to have relationship. And let's face it, some people that you're dating may not have good relationships with family members. That's not necessarily a red flag in and of itself, but here's the next step. Do they have good friends that are healthy, that are working, that are mutually supportive? That's something really important to look at. Because when you're dating, you want to know that this person has some existing relationships that work. If somebody doesn't have any good relationships with family or friends and they're very isolated, that's a major red flag because that may set you up to be their lifeline, the person that they glob onto, and I don't want that for you. What we want to see is somebody who has relationships that are working in their life, because that is what we're going for in codependency recovery, attracting healthier people. Now, another red flag in dating when you're in codependency recovery is when you feel an immediate, intense attraction to the person. Because let's face it, when we grow up in a dysfunctional family, love is confused with pain, with suffering, with chasing the person. And I don't want that for you. What we want is a healthy attraction, but it doesn't overtake us. It doesn't become an immediate obsession. For me, if I have that instant attraction, and for me it's with my female friends, I know to look further because they might be exhibiting traits that remind me of a very dysfunctional family member that I had a lot of trouble with. Because when we grow up in dysfunctional families, we tend to have a type of relationship that we get attracted to. And that type often mimics a parent, a sibling, some significant person in our life that we may have unfinished business with that need to be worked through. And when you have that intense attraction, you may assume that you know the person before you actually do. And that's really emotionally dangerous for you. And if we're emotionally starved, we're at risk for not seeing toxic behavior because that need to be with someone can overshadow our rational thinking. If this has ever happened to you, say me too in the comments. I'm right there with you, but this video is going to help. Now, another red flag in dating when you're in codependency recovery is falling in love with the person's potential. You see what they could be, but their present circumstances or their present character just isn't matching up to that. Please recognize that as a red flag because the potential of somebody is not who they really are. If they are drinking, if they are struggling and not functioning in their life, if they aren't treating you well, if they are making you chase them, or they're not taking responsibility for their own life, those are behaviors you absolutely want to pay attention to. Because what we want is we want to attract somebody who's functional, who can handle their own life and create healthy relationships, or at least be on the path of doing that. Because when we fall in love with somebody's potential, we're setting ourselves up for that person becoming our project. And we may pour all of our time and energy into that person when we really shouldn't be, because we can't change the other person no matter how hard we try. Now, the next red flag in dating is when a person is love bombing you. This is a common narcissistic trait in the beginning where they shower you with gifts, lovely words, with flowers. They want to spend all their time with you. Immediately, they are just making you feel like you're the only person for them. And the problem is, if this is happening in the first month or two, they don't know who you are yet. If somebody is falling in love with you and it's been 2 or 3 weeks, that's a red flag. They may have ulterior motives, like a narcissist, where they want to love bomb you so that they can gain control over you, and I don't want that for you. Love bombing is overwhelming. It's not just giving you 1 or 2 gifts. You're going to feel it because you're going to feel bombarded by all of that energy coming at you. And that is a manipulation that you need to be aware of. But the problem is that if you're emotionally starved, you may see that as a good thing. Like, oh my God, they really see who I am. And I totally get that because in our codependency, we may not have been seen or heard or loved in that way. So when somebody is love bombing you, you may want to eat that up. But the problem is it's going to come back to bite you in the end. Because narcissists are only out for themselves. And I don't want you to attract a narcissist. Now, the next step I want you to do is I want you to go watch my video on how to deepen your codependency recovery, because that also is going to help you create healthy relationships in the long run. Thanks so much.